Hey, welcome to the C3 Comic Show. Me and Kyle have a very special guest today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Will?
Sure, I'm Will Dickstein. I'm creator of the Chosen Universe.
A whole universe.
That's quite the undertaking.
All right, so I probably could have kept going. Anyway, so to break into it, Chosen is a burgeoning sort of science fantasy universe, revolves around the discovery of something called the Fate gene, which is given the markers of Ch05En. People born with a Fate gene are known as Chosen, and they are essentially destined for greatness. They may become CEO of a Fortune 500 or save somebody's life, or they may get superpowers. People with superpowers are often recruited into the Global Hero Society to become capes, which are essentially government-funded protectors in this sort of world of infinite possibilities. Acting as their foil are the terrorist organization known as the Aggregate, as well as freelancers who use their powers for personal gain, often at the cost of others. There are 8 novellas, a 4-issue graphic novel, which is set to release on May 1st, as well as a live-action trailer, all currently set in the Chosen Universe. It's also a full-length novel, which is almost finished being written, that I'm hoping to have traditionally published at some point in the near future.
You are a busy man.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Definitely a lot going.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's super awesome.
Thank you very much.
So,
yeah, it started in 2013. Actually, the first novella started being written in a writing group that I found on Reddit. It was a Brandon Sanderson writing group. He releases these videos and stuff about writing, and you can run your own writing group based on these videos that you watch every week and then submit writing stuff to each other. And I was in this group, and I was getting some pretty good feedback, and I was also sharing the writing outside of the group with a buddy of mine. And my buddy ended up kind of saying all the stuff that these 6 other people were saying, so I kind of silently got out of the group and just started sharing the writing with my buddy, and he was really into it. So, after some polishing on that first one, I just started self-publishing.
That's awesome. So I guess what was the one you had us read, just so that
that was the sort of the volume or the trade paperback of the first 4 comics, and those are called Chosen Grizz. We can talk about the sort of synopsis if you like. So the comics follow Grizz. He's a character from Chosen Episode 2, which is one of the novellas. The story behind the comics are essentially that as a young boy, Grizz suffers the loss of his little brother while they're camping kind of behind their house. He ends up running away from his responsibilities in life after that happens. When his chosen gene activates, it turns him into a Specian, which is like a person with sort of animalistic traits. He goes on to join the Global Hero Society and spends years successfully completing missions as a cape, eventually coming to a point where he's sort of chasing his greatest foe. And one day on a mission, Grizz's lover, Mish, is killed, and Grizz sort of runs away again to join the Academy for the Global Hero Society. He uses his status as a senior cape to become an instructor. And so at that point, the story kind of lines up with Chosen Episode 2, and disaster strikes again, but instead of running away, as is his normal MO, he decides to go back, get back in shape, and sort of finish his final mission.
Yeah, it's I read it today. It's quite a doozy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I worked really hard on it.
Who did the art on that?
So, 2 guys out of Poland, actually. We're going to go back to Reddit for this part of the story. I tried to get the comics off the ground a couple of times. Tried to work with people who were close to me personally, and, things just sort of fizzle out when that happens, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, right. So, eventually, I saved up some money, and I was looking to pay somebody to draw all of these comics for me. And I started talking to people I knew who were involved with being paid to draw stuff like that, and got myself familiar with sort of industry rates, and started looking at DeviantArt and those kinds of places, and eventually found the Comic Book Collabs subreddit, and was on there, and just kind of posted, and, in the post I just kind of went through everything. I was like, because, most people that are ordering art online right now in the same way that I was doing it. They're looking for like 6 or 7 pages with the idea that they pay somebody, start working with them, and then they can pitch somebody like Image, right, with this bigger idea.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do that because I've been doing the self-publishing thing this whole time, and I didn't want to have to, go through possibly trying to start a Kickstarter. Like, I don't know how to be successful with a Kickstarter, I know how to self-publish stuff, and I know how to try and push that. So I saved up what I thought would be a good chunk of money to just kind of pay for the first 4 issues in one fell swoop. I was super honest in my original post on Reddit and was like, this is the budget, this is how many pages I need, kind of hoping that somebody would look at it and say, it's a lot more content than people usually order and be interested for that reason. And I got a lot of responses. I was really fortunate. So I started working with one person, and even in the paid market, had them fizzle out after a couple of weeks, which was like the worst thing. Yeah, the worst thing that could have happened. But I had so many people who also had reached out to me that I just kind of went to the next people in line. It was these 2 guys in Poland named Lucas and Camille. And it was really great because they were actually already working with other people where I live in Las Vegas. So I got to kind of spend a couple minutes vetting them. I reached out to the guys that they work with out here who said they were awesome. And after that, I just kind of sent an email. And, I had all the character notes and the outlines done already. So it became a weekly thing after that. And from October to February, they drew everything.
Nice. And that's kind of the thing with the open market, though, isn't it? That's shocking to me that, you were even on a pay thing with somebody and it kind of fizzled out, because I've also had that happen, where you try and get a book or whatever off the ground, and, you talk with your buddies, and then after about, you see maybe 1 or 2 pages, it's very clear that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But, man, to have somebody fizzle out after they said that, but I suppose it's, all freelance stuff, and it's somebody who says, I can do this, and then they start doing it, and then they don't realize how much work a book actually is.
Yeah, I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. The first person I chose had done other comics before, but just wasn't in the cards for me and them. I don't know. That's just the way it happened, and so you just deal with it and you move on. I ended up being out a couple weeks of funding, and I actually freelance on the side, and so started just kind of picking up the freelancing and paying out of the budget that I'd already had left over, and then just catching up on the back end as we worked towards sort of the last couple of weeks of payments. So,
nice.
Well, I'm definitely glad it worked out, because the end product is pretty amazing. I'm actually really interested in the universe. How did you just create this? You just kind of sit down and because it's very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it did you bounce ideas off anyone, or is this all your own mastermind creation?
So that's. Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people, when they answer something about world building, might say that they took the time to sit down and come up with a whole just history and all of that stuff, and I really didn't do any of that. I wrote the first novella in this writing group, and it was just based around this really simple idea. And once it was finished, I tried to make sure that I could come up with sort of like a brand story for the universe itself, and that's based off of actually like these. I don't know if you read any of the Forgotten Realms comics, right, or the Forgotten Realms novels. They're Dungeons and Dragons, but the Forgotten Realms comics all open with this sort of introduction to the Forgotten Realms universe, and they talk about how it's a world for heroes and magic and all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I had sort of a quick paragraph that could do that for my own stuff, right? And so after I wrote the first novella, I went back and just wrote this paragraph that just kind of introduces all the little aspects or whatever, and from there I've been slowly world building with more and more details with these novellas. And so in that sense, I did it that way so that I could make sure that I spent the time to world build before writing a full-length book, so I could have enough sort of substance to the universe itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
And when you were writing those novellas, did you ever find that you kind of stepped on your own feet? You'll have an idea, you write it down, and then you say, well, I can't really do that because I already said this or something, to the effect of that?
Also a really great question. So the answer is sort of a yes and a no. I think, so before I started writing the novellas, I'd actually written 2 full-length books, right? it's something I had done before, and they were both really bad, and that's why I went to shorter stuff, was because I felt like I had a good grasp on putting stories together as a whole. But for some reason, when I stretched it out across 70 or 80,000 words, I just kind of lost the narrative, and so I wanted to work with smaller stuff so I could just get better at telling a cohesive story, right? So to answer your question, these are so short form that if there was something I wanted to put in there that was going to contradict in some way, I would just change it, because it was so easy to keep track of all this information.
And you're the creator; you can do whatever you want. So
right, and I don't want to break my own rules. I think people appreciate when you stay within your own boundaries that you set. But also to that end, all of the novellas and the comics and everything really that's in Chosen, it's all told from a first person perspective. Okay, so all the novellas, it's different people talking each time. There's 8 novellas. There's 8 different people who tell you a story about whatever, and so part of what goes into that is these are all unreliable narrators. None of them are in that third-person point of view where what they're telling you is the empirical truth. So one person who is a cave might describe the aggregate as a terrorist organization, and one person who is in the aggregate might tell you something completely different, because realistically they're people who are going to have different perspectives, right? So in that aspect, I get to sort of not have to worry that someone's going to go through with this fine-tooth comb to say, like, oh, well, you said people couldn't run faster than 500 miles an hour, but now there's this fast-running character who says they just, went Mach 7 or something, right?
Right, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, then you can be like, well, that person didn't know about this, so...
Exactly. And
I'm the overseer, you're like the DM, like...
right.
You have the final call.
And it is science fantasy. It's not science fiction. And I think the biggest difference between those is that everything is sort of based in real-world physics and real-world possibilities, but, I'm not going to get so specific that it's going to be like when that guy who wrote The Martian did his AMA, and everyone was like, hey, how come you used this vegetable growing system in space? And he was like, well, because this one wasn't invented yet. I'm not going to ever deal with that. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, so.
So on the subject, since your world is so, expansive and has all this, do you play any tabletop or anything? Do your friends are they like, dude, you should totally run a campaign in your universe? You ever thought about doing something like that?
I played D&D for a long time. I had a group that I ran with for I think almost 5 years, and I haven't had a chance to play at all since some of us sort of moved away and stuff, and some of my friends do still tabletop on the regular. That hasn't come up yet to play in the Chosen universe, but I'm sure as soon as I show some of them that you asked me that question, a few of them might want to. The idea of a board game has already come up. It came up a year and a half ago, and I actually wrote the storyline to it and had started working with some people that I knew. And when it came down to deciding how the game was going to play and then trying to work out the sort of mathematical system behind it, that's not something I was going to be good at. And, you start working with people, and then it just kind of fizzles out. So, but the idea of a board game has definitely come up, and I would love to do that.
So, what would you say? What are your obviously D&D, but what are your inspirations for your universe? Because the Chosen itself, the whole aspect of the gene, it's kind of a cool twist, because on some part, there's kind of an X-Men vibe to it, but then as you're saying, it's not just a powers thing. It might be encoded in your DNA that you're going to win the lottery.
Right. Exactly.
And that's not that's not a physical trait. That's just that's luck, and that's really interesting, because that's not just a possibility of it's not just a possibility. It's written in your genes that such and such event is going to happen.
Right, and so I think one of the biggest things that I do try to communicate to the point that you kind of left off on there is that even people with the Chosen gene, it might be latent. It has to be an active gene for that sort of greatness to really manifest or happen. And so for some people, the trigger that makes the gene become active is like a life and death scenario. It'll activate when they're falling off a cliff or something like that, right? Other people are born with an active gene just like you, but it all comes down to it being carried on from the parents and stuff like that. And so, it is
there
kind of...
a way I can, like, genetically alter it into me? Like, can I get, like, a vial from some evil science corporation and just, like, inject myself with it, or...
That is a great question, and I think the answer to it would be, maybe using some kind of technology like CRISPR, right, which is what that does.
Yeah.
So not outside the realm of possibility, and I would say maybe stay tuned for the full-length novel when that comes out, if you enjoy that idea. Okay, but what was your question? Sorry, let's go back to that question. So it was, where do I draw my inspiration? Inspiration.
Yeah, what was the inspiration for it?
So you're not wrong when it comes to the X-Men thing. I think when I started... so I didn't start reading comics until I was 21, like 5 years ago. I got in like right when they did the New 52 stuff. I had actually come across that panel of Captain America during the Civil War in the Spider-Man comic where he talks about how you have to be like a tree beside the river of truth, right? Like, no, you move, I'm talking? Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, so I came across that panel like right when I turned 21 on whatever site I was on before I went on Reddit regularly, and I was like, oh my god, like that's comics, like that's what I'm missing, right? Because I'd been into all the other kinds of stuff. I just never read a comic book before, but I saw that and I was like, I don't know, it just really hit me, And so so after that, it became, let's just read everything I'd ever missed, right? And so I really liked, when I went back and read the Civil War, I kind of liked the idea of superheroes being a government entity. I think that really is a logical conclusion, and I didn't choose a side while I was reading the Civil War, and obviously I really like Captain America and I like Spider-Man and all that stuff, but coming from that futurist perspective where you're trying to say what would really happen, what would really benefit society, like I'm kind of on board with both sides. So anyway, so part of that obviously heavily influenced, but the biggest thing is obviously drawing from all of these different places, because I think at this point, everything kind of crosses over with each other, and ultimately I ended up becoming a much bigger DC fan. I have a Green Lantern tattoo, all of that,
You just won me over.
Well, it is, yeah. So, okay, so at the end of the day, my biggest thing is obviously drawing from all these things that I really appreciate, but I think the driving the driving point that is behind everything I'm writing is that I want characters who have pimples, right? I want to get you as close to reality without it being like uncanny valley kind of thing,
Right.
So just to give you an example, the first novella is about this guy named Frank, and Frank is a pizza delivery driver, and he works at his family's pizzeria. All right, and he's a young adult, and like any young adult who still lives at home, or not any, but many young adults who live at home still, both of his parents are in his ear to kind of get off his butt, stop being a delivery driver, and do something with his life, okay? But he's got his father in one ear, who owns the pizzeria, who is like, I want you to take over this family business that supported us all throughout your life. And he's got his mom in his other ear, and his mom is a well-known freelancer, actually equivalent of a supervillain, who wants him to kind of start doing that. And so I just try to write characters that have pimples. I want you to be able to relate to them. I want them to be in realistic situations, and I want to sort of bridge that gap instead of another story about all these crazy people with superpowers fighting over just whatever. I want to bring it into the real world, and I want you to be like invested in these characters because you could work at a coffee shop and be working with somebody like this and run into these same kind of issues.
Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I really like that idea because that's what drew me to Spider-Man right away. Like for starting out comics, is that real aspect of it. Is to me, he didn't really feel like a superhero. Like he was really flawed because he's just a normal guy, really, who just happens to have these powers. And whenever that's kind of what I'm drawn to is the whole real life, scenario with like a little bit of fantasy added to it, obviously for the the comic feel.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I
really like that direction.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think the comparison between him and Batman is usually that Batman is how like a child would handle being a superhero. He's super angry, he wants to scare people, and he's always punching people in the face. Whereas Spider-Man is sort of the more mature, like literally a college student take on being a superhero. Yeah.
I've actually never heard that comparison before.
I don't know where I ran into that, but it always has stuck with me. It might have been on 4chan, man. I have no idea.
So much stuff out there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. Let's steer the conversation. What is it about the Green Lantern that you are such a fan of?
Okay, so even before I had started reading comics, I always liked the Green Lantern, and I think, because I think we're all about the same age, right? You guys like 26, 27, somewhere around there?
Yep.
Yeah,
okay,
pretty much.
Cool. Okay, so when we were little, there was a 90s cartoon that starred Kyle Rayner. And, he was really our Green Lantern, but I don't know if it was like a short movie or just like a couple episodes or whatever, but I remember on a Saturday morning getting to watch this short thing with Kyle Rayner, and his depiction of what a Green Lantern could do always really resonated with me. I always felt like I had a pretty active imagination, and Kyle Rayner is really that Green Lantern who takes the concept kind of into this much bigger realm. You've got John who is an architect, so he builds really intricate things, and you've got Hal, who is just like kind of America's poster child, and so he hits you with like a baseball bat, but Kyle's the guy who's like making Tyrannosaurus Rexes and things like that, and so at a really young age, that was the superhero who I really felt like I could relate to, because it was all, just what you could imagine. And I think, can you guys hear the baby? Sorry.
Oh yeah. I got one too. I know how it goes.
He means well. Anyway, so I don't think I would advise anyone to judge superheroes based solely on what their power is, even though a lot of people end up doing that. But at a time when that's what I was doing, I really liked the Green Lantern just for what his power was. And then once I started reading comics, got a lot more into it, especially after what Jeff Johns did with the Green Lantern storyline as a whole, with the nine colors overall and all that stuff.
The spectrum of emotion, yeah.
Spectrum of emotion, and going back and reading the Blackest Night comics and stuff like that, one thing that I kind of noticed was that at that point in time, like, and especially like right before the New 52 took off, all of the comics, everything DC did revolved around the concept of hope being like the strongest thing there was, right? Mm-hmm. So the Blue Lanterns, that they like have to be tempered because they won't ever give up, and you even see it in the Sandman comics when he fights that lower level demon or whatever, when they're doing that wordplay game, and eventually the guy's like, oh well, I'm a destroyer of planets, and Sandman's like, well, I'm hope, right? And that was a really big thing, and I thought that in the Green Lantern comics especially, or just the Green Lantern mythos, they really drive home that concept that hope is this uber powerful thing and super important really well, and I really like that. So
nice. That's kind of interesting that you were talking about Kyle, because that's also not just for the namesake, because I'm Kyle as well, but I always thought that was super cool that the guy who can construct anything with a ring is an artist.
Yeah.
Then wouldn't that be the ultimate weapon? A guy with unlimited imagination has unlimited power, within the realm. Just, for storytelling purposes, obviously my ring wears out whenever I really need it.
Right.
But
yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
At least to sell issues, till the next issue I can't recharge. Right. But yeah, I always just thought that was such a cool concept. Nice. Good to know there's other people in the world who've got the same excellent taste I do, Josh.
Yeah, that definitely is. Still waiting for that other Deadpool superfan. I mean, maybe I'll find one now that the movie's out. Did you see the movie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It was really good.
It was awesome.
It was a great time. I'm kind of hit or miss on movies in general, but that one definitely got me out there. Like, I didn't get out there for Ant-Man, but I got out there for Deadpool.
Ant-Man was just kind of a...
It was good, but...
just oversaturation. I mean, we've seen his story already.
Mm-hmm.
Other heroes.
It was a good Netflix movie.
I totally agree with that. I think we watched it on Google Play for $4.
Yeah, can't go wrong. You do the Google reward things. You like take quizzes, get free money, and use it on movies. And
that's exactly what I do. I just bought a movie yesterday.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, man.
I love this thing.
So, Will, let me ask you about self-publishing. You said that you not really big on Kickstarter or GoFundMe or Indiegogo or those ones, but you self-publish everything. Is there ever a desire to go big? I mean, if somebody from one of the big companies came and said, we really like your stuff, we'd like to publish it, would you like to go there, or are you kind of like, what, I do well enough with my self-publishing that, unless it was something huge and major, I would want to keep it my own?
With every essence and ounce of my being, yes, in a heartbeat, I would go big. Here's really where I'm coming from. I did the self-publishing thing as a way to work towards traditional publishing with the written works, and I went into comic books because I grew very passionate about them, and I thought that the universe would be well served branching out into other forms of storytelling. And there's really kind of two sort of conventional ways you can approach being an author at this point, I think. People who spend a lot of time looking into it are generally going to be told one of two things at this point, and this is my opinion. The first is to write a book, polish it, get it to look super nice, learn how to write a really great query letter, and start querying agents to try and work out a deal with a publisher, right? And the other piece of advice that you can potentially take is to self-publish, build a platform, start getting people who are into you, who are looking out for your stuff, prove that you can sell already, and then at that point try to approach an agent with something new under the pretense of I have these analytics and they prove that I'm great. So because I started with short form, novellas, and because I wanted to work at getting better at sort of improving my craft and getting better at storytelling over longer sets of words, it just made more sense for me to try and just build my own platform, start self-publishing, start seeing if I could sell myself to other people, and start trying to get some fans. And then this is the year, 3 years into it, where I'm going to start approaching agents, and I do. I've got thousands of downloads at this point on some of the titles, and I've got real numbers behind me, so I can try and make myself look as attractive as possible to a publisher.
I honestly think that's kind of the way to go in this day and age, especially like music, books, more of that art is, it's still a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but it's much easier than it was, go back 20 years, there's really nobody that's self-publishing. Mm-hmm. But now in this day and age with, how many, the internet is just huge. You have all of Reddit, DeviantArt, all of those places where you can get your work out there, and it's basically, honestly, if people think it's good and it gets around there, then you've done something right. Because there is a saturation in the market because of how easy it is to get stuff out there. There's so much stuff out there, so how do you go through it all? So I kind of feel that if you can get those downloads and get everything, especially with how saturated this market is, I definitely think you're going places. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I look at it.
And then let me ask you a question about the novels in general. Obviously, you said that you're writing the novellas because they're kind of shorter. One thing we've definitely noticed is that our day, kind of this day and age, people like shorter stuff. That's a big thing on those. There's not as opposed to maybe 20, 30 years ago, there's not as many book readers as there used to be. But, kind of like you said, if you can get them, I read a 20, 30-page story by this guy and I really liked it, I would definitely read something, long form by him. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the YouTube formula too, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You got these guys who they enjoy their 7-minute videos or whatever, and then they make a movie, and then they've already got this built-in audience. So I guess what kind of the question is how do you feel about the book market in general?
All right, so
I know that's a really weird question, but I hopefully you kind of understand what I'm saying.
I think I do. So let me talk to kind of your first point to start. So I felt okay. So the first novella, episode 1, is permanently free anywhere you find it online. And I did that kind of in line with what you're saying to just give people an easy reason to check me out, you know, and more along the lines with what you just said as well. You know, one of the things that I would tell people when episode 1 was the only thing online was that, you know, if you go to the bathroom twice today, you'll probably finish it, right? Right. You know, I wanted to give, you know, no reason not to check it out. Pretty much. And so I totally agree with it being a good way for people to kind of dip their toes into the water of what I got going on. And I think I've been pretty successful just with people I've had the chance to speak with who I've asked to read it because, you know, a lot of the time, maybe like 3 out of 5 people do want to read the other ones. So I definitely think we both had the right idea when you're saying that it's easier to get people in with shorter content. So how I feel about the market in general, you know, I think there are a lot of people who, I think it depends on genre, man. Like, you know, the science fantasy superhero genre, they didn't even have a category for that on Amazon until like 2014. You know, this is like, really? Yeah, no joke, man. When I started publishing, it wasn't until I was almost done with the first anthology that when I went to go publish, I could pick a superhero category. Everything before that point was under the pretense of science fiction. You know, they don't even break that out. And so I think what we have, you know, what I'm in right now is a pretty new sort of genre that luckily isn't so incredibly saturated. There are some really big names in it. One of them is Brandon Sanderson. I didn't know that he was going to start writing superhero stuff, but he did like last year. He's like 1 or 2 books in or whatever. And then there's, you know, 2 or 3 other really big authors. But, you know, when it comes to self-publishing at least, it really depends on the genre that you're in. There are more readers in a lot of other genres. So even with the saturation, if you market yourself even a little bit, I think you can see some pretty good sales. I'm definitely not making enough money doing it this way to live off of. It's definitely just something that I'm passionate about and trying to get people into. But again, it's just to lead towards hopefully traditional publishing, right? To increase. Yeah, go ahead.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, kind of because you know you're doing the comics, you got the short, which I believe I've seen that too, yeah. And then you're talking about movies and things like that. Kind of one of the things we noticed is that Avengers was a huge movie, but it didn't necessarily sell comics. You know, so it got people into that universe, but they didn't really jump onto that comics bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I feel like, was it a conscious decision to spread the Chosen Universe out everywhere? Or was it just kind of, well, hey, you know what? It'd be really cool to have a little bit of a short to show people this, and then, well, hey, it'd be really cool to have a comic book. Did you just kind of fall into that, or was that kind of the master plan the whole time?
It was conscious. It was totally conscious. I don't know about master plan, but it was definitely conscious. I have a marketing background. I have my associate's degree is in journalism with integrated marketing communications, and I was going to get my bachelor's in the same degree field with a marketing emphasis, but ended up going interdisciplinary. Anyway, I ended up taking a lot of marketing classes. I work in marketing now for a large corporation, and read a lot of sort of marketing stuff every day. You know, I'm relatively tapped in. So it was definitely a conscious decision. I definitely wanted to get out across as many sort of avenues for people to discover me as possible, and I wanted to make sure that they all intertwined. So the trailer itself sort of is doing 2 things. The first is to show you that it's a universe that can be taken to live action, right? Mm-hmm. And also it acts as sort of just like blanket marketing material for the universe itself. It wasn't a book trailer. It wasn't anything other than just literally a trailer for the universe itself to say, like, this is a thing, it exists, and then at the very end of it, there's a little bit of promotion about, you know, you can find this here and find this here. And it's the same thing with the comics. The comics are comics, and then as you guys saw, you know, in the very beginning, there's one ad for episode 1 because, you know, there's an ad for episode 1, and it lets you know that it's totally free. And then at the very end, there's one ad each for the anthologies, and I think the last page is an advertisement for the newsletter. And the newsletter is just so people can, one, keep up with updates and stuff like that for new works, because I'm not running a blog or anything. But also I send out in each newsletter free flash fiction that is also a part of the Chosen universe. And the flash fiction gives either insight into characters that already exist or tells, new little stories. But it's always right around 500 words, and it's just like a quick little story right at the top of the newsletter just to keep you going if you're, kind of waiting for new stuff to come out.
And the other side about it is, let's be honest, if you make something really awesome and you're proud of it and you're passionate about it, I mean, if it's your hobby, you want to spend as much time as it and basically do everything. I mean, you want to reach for the stars, so I definitely don't blame you for wanting to get it out in like every medium,
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, it's passion, so.
Yeah.
Where do you have any where do you kind of want to expand next? You mentioned like a board game, but what else? I mean, what are you reaching for?
All right, so
in the words of yogurt, merchandising. What's
All right, so right now we're finishing up that full-length book, right?
Yep.
What and I say we, but that's because I'm used to having to say we because I represent somebody else. But so what I'm doing right now is finishing up the book. Okay, so I also have the outline ready for another volume of comics. It's going to follow a character who's been in a couple of the novellas already. She's really cool in my opinion. She has like a bunch of magical tattoos on her body that all do different things. So the idea is to finish the book, work on pitching it. Towards the end of the year, start working with Lucas and Camille again on this second thing of comics, hopefully for like a early 2017 release date, right? And then beyond those two things, we're a little open. The board game idea still feels really cool, but would be, I think, too much work to tackle right now. But the written stuff is definitely not going to stop. While I'm pitching the book to agents and things like that, I'm still going to be working on new novellas also, because I would like the book series to be traditionally published, and if I can work it out, keep self-publishing the novellas as well.
Okay, and let me ask you about the trailer. Did you work with a production company? Was that people that you knew, or was that, did you kind of put that all together yourself? You said you're in marketing, so I'm sure you have, kind of a grasp on how to do stuff like that. So what's the story behind that?
Sure. So I did work with a local company, a local small business here in Las Vegas, and I got a really great deal on the trailer itself. I think I paid like $1,300 for it, and so that was really great. And that was with full effects. And I worked with this guy Doug Farah locally. The name of his business escapes me. I think it's Red Carpet Media. I don't remember. I'm so sorry, Doug. Please don't hate me. Okay, so I had this sort of really grand idea for what I wanted the trailer to do and the kinds of scenes that I wanted in it. I did know that I wanted the length to be short, obviously, and I ended up kind of doing the same thing that I did with the comics, where I went to talk to people I knew who knew about sort of paying someone to do that, and had them look at this sort of outline that I had. And the first person I sat down with was like, you're not going to be able to do any of this, right? And so I parsed down the ideas a little bit to something that would be a little more realistic and affordable also. And when I brought it to Doug, he just was like, tell me more about this part, tell me more about this, what's your overall vision kind of thing. And we ended up getting the whole thing done in a couple of weeks. He actually has a sort of cast of actors that he likes to work with. I don't know if you guys came across it, but did you see that Nightwing show that was on YouTube for like 10 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I believe so.
That was produced it was produced with people who were out of Las Vegas. I think they shot most of it in California, but one of the guys who's in my trailer, he was like the runner-up to be Nightwing in that series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was just like this little, Doug's just tapped into this little community of actors that we have out here, and he's just able to kind of get it done really quickly. We have a couple places in downtown Las Vegas that you can rent out by the hour, and they just have like a bunch of props and sets and stuff like that. And so he used like 2 rooms in there with with sets that he could set up really quickly with these people's equipment, and then he had like 2 locations in mind to shoot in the Southwest, Las Vegas, and that was it, man. He was done in like a couple days. It was really great.
That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for production stuff wise, like that, pricing and timing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a huge accomplishment. It probably seemed like, because I would say you're definitely, you have a clear vision and you're very detailed, so when you're working with people, do they kind of, I guess that makes it easier to work with you, that kind of probably helps the process a bit too.
I would certainly hope so. I try to do, I hope people like working with me. I try, okay, so let's talk about the comics, right, and with this concept. I had the outline, and the outline itself, I downloaded like a template from whatever site you can find comic book outlines from, because it's a lot like script writing. And so what I tried to do when I approached the outline was just get the details in there with the dialogue that conveyed the overall sort of picture that I was seeing in my head, and with the specific things that I knew I wanted for sure to be included. But when I took the outline to Lucas and Camille, I just told them, I was like, look, man, if you feel like you're going to be passionate about this, and they told me they were, and I thought I believed them or whatever. I was like, if I wanted them to be able to take it and own it, and with their own style and put their own stuff in there. So, it wasn't totally devoid of detail, but I wasn't so detailed that I was like, draw it with the camera from this angle, do the close up here. It was just like, it was just like, here's the feeling in the scene, draw that, right? And so to that end too, I needed to make sure that, in a lot of these visual instances, I worked with people who are experienced, because, I needed them to have the ability to run with it and say, okay, this is the feeling we're going for on this page. This is how we're going to do it, And especially with the fight scenes, I would just be like, giant fight scene on this page, and then and they just ran with it, and you get like these guys jumping all over the place, right? So I wanted to
switching.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, switching gears a bit. In Las Vegas, do they have like quite a few comic conventions and stuff there? Do you promote yourself at those? Do you have like booths? You find that like that location kind of serves you well for that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I say that it's a great question because I'm actually really glad that you asked me. I haven't, and here's why. So I haven't gotten into doing any event promotion literally until this year. I can't believe you just asked me this question. So Las Vegas has kind of 2 good-sized comic book conventions that at least I know about. If there's more than 2, I certainly don't know. But the first one is Wizard World. It actually was last weekend. And Wizard World is, it's a big one. You guys might be familiar with it. But that's the one where, like, people are going to go to look at awesome cosplay, and they're going to go to meet Matt Smith, and they're going to, go and do all of that, meet their favorite artists and stuff. And then what we also have is the amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con, which happens a little later in the year, usually in June. And that is the one that, as a creator, you want to booth at because you want to sell stuff. And so, the June date for the Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con is why I have a May release date, because I wanted it to be soon after the comics were finished, but also kind of near to the convention itself, just in case any local people are going to watch this podcast and want to come see me. So I actually have, and I think that's in the version of the comic that I sent you, where part of it being self-funded is I also paid to have all of these copies printed that I'm bringing to this convention. And I took the time to design and put together all of the stuff that you would take to a booth. I've got like a table runner that comes across the table, right? And I've got 2 stand-up banners. They're like 8 feet tall and stuff for the just as advertisements for the novellas. I've got T-shirts for people who buy one of the comics. I printed 55 copies of the comics, and a lot of people are going to have the ability to take a T-shirt from me from the booth and hopefully put it on then as a sort of guerrilla marketing tactic, so that they can then go walk around and people can see my brand at the convention. I have a lot of friends who are going to be coming over the course of the 3 days who have committed to doing that, like just walking around with my T-shirt on.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let me ask you then, because this is kind of something we were from North Dakota, which obviously doesn't really have much for conventions because we got like 5 people in an igloo up here. But in Minneapolis, there's 2 major ones. There's, once again, Wizard World, and then there's the, I can't remember what it's called. It's, actually, they've got 2 of them. There's the One Day Wonder, and then they got a bigger one. But I've also kind of noticed Metacon.
Yeah, I think it's Metacon is in Minneapolis.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, you could be right. I bet you are right.
Okay, no problem.
But as you kind of described, 2 very different groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Wizard World is kind of like everybody, like you're saying, like cosplayers. Anybody who's seen any of the movies can feel, going like there. But the other ones, like, and I assume the Las Vegas one, it's a very different crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's very that's the people who actually read the stuff and who are actually, really big fans of the medium. So, do you feel that going to Wizard World? I don't know if you did or not. Did you go to Wizard World Vegas?
No, I did not. I'm so deep inside of working on this book that I'm not really even seeing any friends right now. So, no, I didn't.
But do you feel that is, at this point, would that even be worth your time with that audience?
Okay, so here's the thing about when I was scoping out conventions to either get a booth at or just go to. Conventions are a big thing for current authors. So, when the convention is relevant, because there are sci-fi conventions and things like that, and when the topic of the convention is relevant to the author and the genre they write in, usually they try and get a booth and try and sell some books. So I went looking to see what kind of characteristics I should be looking for as a creator when I decide what kind of convention to go and set up a booth at or just attend. And it wasn't a personal observation that I made about Wizard versus Amazing Comic-Con in Las Vegas. It was actually a piece of advice that I ran into on, I think, the self-published subreddit or something where, one of the authors on there was talking about when they go to conventions, they've got sort of lost leading conventions, which would be the Wizard World, which, there's just a ton of people there. You're probably not going to sell anything, but you get to talk to a lot of cool people. And, if nothing else, you get to see cool cosplay, right? And then he was saying that there's also these smaller conventions that people go to, and they go because they want to buy indie stuff, or they go because they want to just buy books and stuff like that. And I know for a fact that here in Las Vegas, Wizard World is the bigger one. And then having talked to people who have been to the Amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con here, they talk about going there to buy stuff. So it was a really easy decision. But Wizard World would definitely be worth my time, just because it would be nice to go there and just be involved in the local con community, Get to see maybe some of the same people that I see at Amazing, and they can be like, oh, yeah, there's that chosen guy, like, I should go talk to him,
Nice.
Yeah.
And you get to, like, reach out to a broader audience, I would say, more, get to hand out more cards and talk to more people, and hopefully they... when they go through their bag, when they get home, they see your little business card and be like, oh, yeah, this was really cool, and, like, check you out.
Right, yeah, we're stepping it up one step from the business cards. I've got, I'm giving away the first anthology to everybody I meet at a convention who will sign up for the newsletter.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
100%, man. Yeah, I'm so excited for the conventions. Actually, this is going to be the first year where I'm going to a legit writing conference, too. And that's actually at the end of April. And I'm cleaning up the book right now because there are going to be agents at the conference that I'm going to be trying to pitch to also. So,
nice.
The pitching starts the last week of April. But,
And definitely good luck with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm really glad to hear, you got definitely a concise plan. You have all this stuff going for you. I'm actually really excited to see where Chosen goes. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to sign up for that newsletter thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Do it.
And I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I got a question for you. Is if anybody stumbles across this, and kind of, you are very much so where I think a lot of people want to be, in terms of, you're really motivated, you're putting your stuff out there at what seems like, basically a good pace and everything like that. What would you say to the aspiring either comic book the book author or anything like that that's just sitting there and says, well, I'm kind of like Will. I just got this idea I've been kicking around. I kind of want a universe. Where would you tell them to start? Like where, what was your big mistake? And then what was the big thing you learned? What was, maybe something you did and you're like, thank God I did this. I saved myself a ton of time.
All right. I think the big mistake would be to keep kicking the idea around and not just sit down and start working on it. I don't think there's enough sort of thought given to, you sat down and you wrote a book and it's 90,000 words, and that is an amazing accomplishment. And so guess what you get to do now? You get to edit for another couple of months, Like starting writing a book is so in those first couple of stages, like you're not even close to done when you finish the first draft. You're just not. I don't know that anybody ever is. I don't know that there's anybody in the world who can sit down, write 90,000 words, and have it all be cohesive and make sense. It just doesn't work, man. So
I don't know if you're familiar with the Goosebumps series.
No, I hear you. I personally love writing, but at the same aspect, I can't even fathom writing a novel or even a short novel. I like going on the writing prompts subreddit because you get like a sentence and you write like 5 paragraphs and that's that. And like that's done. That's the story.
People, and then people tell you that you're great and it feels really nice.
Exactly. And that, that's all I need. But yeah.
Actually, yeah, I was dabbling there for a minute on our writing prompts and then realized that I was spending time on that and not spending time on more stuff that could be helping me become a real author. And so that was actually when I decided, it was after like 2 months of occasionally submitting to our writing prompts, and I was like, if I just took like one of these responses I'm writing out a month, I could turn it into flash fiction and I could start this newsletter, and add value to it in the form of just free stories. So that was actually, our writing prompts was a big reason that I started the newsletter. And because I only started it like last September or whatever. But so the thing that I would say I was glad, how did you phrase it? That I was glad that I started doing, right? That saved me?
Right. Well, just anything, you're like, anything you look back on and you're like, man, I didn't know it at the time, or I did know it at the time, and man, am I glad I did that because I avoided a huge mistake in doing it.
Yeah. Really glad that I took the time to get 2 books out before I ever tried to start self-publishing or putting things out that I wanted other people to read and like really, really judge me in the real world on like a really, real world judgy level. And the reason I say that is because I feel like you've got to get to a place where you understand where your weaknesses are. Ira Glass, This American Life, right? He's got a really great quote about it, which is actually a Zen Pencils comic. If you guys are familiar, you should check Zen Pencils out. He's got a really great quote where he says that one thing nobody tells artists or creators or whatever is that your stuff is going to suck at first. And that, sometimes what ends up driving you or whatever is the idea that you understand that you suck, but that you also understand what kinds of things don't suck. Right, and you're always actively working towards making things that don't suck. So I think it was really a good thing that I made myself write these 2 books that no one's ever going to read because they're barely books, right? They're barely narratives. Because when I did, I felt like I got a good grasp on all the areas that I was really weak as an author. And we don't need to go into what those are, but I feel like I have made progress in a lot of areas after getting through the novellas then, making sure that I work on this aspect of writing or work on this or work on this. And so I think that's a really good thing, is to try and be honest with yourself however you can and say, what am I bad at in comparison to these people that I like reading, in comparison to these stories that I think I want to be telling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too, and I'm sure that you'll agree with me, is I also have a marketing background, and having a marketing background is so huge in knowing how to sell yourself and your idea. Mm-hmm. Because there's artists out there that may have a really cool idea, they have all these ideas in their head, they can write them down, they could get a novel, but honestly, if you don't know how to sell yourself or your product, then it's just gonna sit there. It's gonna just be on your paper and maybe 3 of your friends read it. You know, you
Right.
have to know how to do, come with a marketing plan, sell yourself, sell your idea, and get it out there.
Right. That
So
was. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yep.
I was just going to say, I think having some sort of marketing background, whether it be education or, some sort of whatever it may be, is a huge advantage to anybody in any field nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree, and that was a big reason why the brand itself, even though it's Chosen, I made sure that the brand had Ch05En, right? So people look at that, and I have a cousin who for a little while gave me a hard time about it because it looks like leet speak or whatever, right? Like or like we're on WoW and it's hacksaws and stuff, and so. The reason behind it wasn't to be cute. It was because when I was getting ready to take this series public way back on the first one, and I had to decide on a name for this universe, I started Googling around for all these things that I thought I might want to call it. Originally I was thinking about calling it the Fate Gene, and when I Googled the Fate Gene, I got all these weird search results, and I was like, okay, well let's dial it back a little bit. What if I just name it Chosen, right, and spell out and name it, basically the gene marker, right? And when I Googled that, the search results weren't even really there. And so when I saw what the search results were for something I wanted to take over, all I saw was this easy portion of Google for me to just saturate and get into. And now, if you Google Chosen the way it is spelled in my brand, I'm pretty much all that comes up. I think there's like one guy who's got some Twitter handle that's been there since like 2007, and he's got like one random link, man, on that first page. Now, I've kicked him down from like the first spot all the way. I think he's like 7 on the first page, but like everything else is me. Even the wiki comes up that I haven't ever done anything with. That comes up. That's how much I've been able to saturate my keywords, and I've been able to do the same thing with my name too. That's why I never wrote under a pen name or anything, because even before I started publishing, when you Googled my name, I'm not John Smith. I'm William Dickstein, and there's not a lot of William Dicksteins in the world, and so it was very easy for me to make sure that if somebody went to go look for me online, they could find me. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Perfect. Well, we're kind of running at that hour mark here, so
cool.
Do you have any questions for us or anything you want to say?
Oof.
And then after that, we'll go ahead and plug everything you want. We'll put links to everything and take it away.
All right, let me ask you guys this in these last couple minutes. Be honest with me, all right? How did you feel about that last Superman arc that they just did? Just to catch up. Just to catch up with the listeners who don't know, Superman over the last couple months had his powers pretty much completely taken away by Vandal Savage, and now has them back. They totally reversed. Go ahead.
And that was. I'm not totally up on it. I was to the point where he had that solar explosion thing that he was doing.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it did anything for Superman. I wasn't really that interested in the story, as I'm not 100% caught up on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's kind of a video actually we got planned later, is the relevancy of Superman in today.
Oh, good idea. I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't even started that arc. I've actually had some qualms because I actually just got into comics, I would say maybe 3-4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The Flashpoint Paradox is what got me into it. And knowing Kyle and Turnus and Mike, I was like, hey guys, I'm into comics now, where do I go? So they kind of directed me, and I love the Flashpoint, Deadpool, and stuff like that. And I've always had qualms with Superman. I never really liked the guy. I'm just like, how do you write a story with a character who really isn't flawed? I mean, he's Superman.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
I've read the Red Sun, and I've read some stuff, and my opinion kind of changed on that. But like Kyle said, what is the relevancy? He's somebody to fight Batman for a major blockbuster, realistically. But that's kind of my thoughts on Superman. I'm not the biggest fan of him.
That's fair.
How about you, Will? What's your take on that?
Oh man, they walked all over themselves with the story arc. You talk about the solar flare thing. That was like a sweet new superpower that he was using, and then he kept using it too much, and you were like, why is he using it so much? And then it turned out it was because he liked that, for a day while he was recharging, he was just like a regular dude, and that was really cool. And they did this really cool issue where he goes and he like randomly runs into Bane, and he has to fight Bane like as a regular dude or whatever, and that was really fun. But then eventually Vandal Savage starts somehow knowing he was going to do that. And also, while he was doing it, like, sapping his energy and making it so he couldn't, like, charge up as quickly or at all. And then he's, like, a regular dude all of a sudden for a bunch of issues. And then, at one point he's, like, snorting kryptonite. It's like a form of chemotherapy to, like, get rid of these crappy cells that aren't taking in solar energy. And he had, like, these weirdo powers for, like, 10 seconds. And then... he gets supercharged and he becomes Superman all over again. I don't know. It was all right. I love comics. I love comics. I would read Superman comics if they put him in in outer space with no other characters. I like Superman that much. So yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Did it remind you of what's it called? All-Star Superman. The whole solar flare thing. The whole idea of being an average person.
I guess there definitely were similarities between them, but All-Star Superman, is easily that's the Superman comic you need to make people read, right?
Yeah.
Is All-Star Superman, and my favorite scene is the one where he flies out on that edge and goes to talk to that girl, and he tells her like, "Hey man, like your doctor really was late, it's going to be okay." Right? And I feel like that's one of the greatest representations of who Superman is someone who even for all of his gifts and for his godlike powers, someone who cares about us so much that he takes the time to do just what he can because, more than caring about us, he believes in the greatness that humanity can achieve, right? And that's why Lex Luthor is such a perfect villain for him, is because Lex Luthor also believes in humanity, but he frickin' hates Superman.
I will give credit where credit is due. That is actually one of my favorite parts about Superman, is he is an alien from another world, but he believes in the whole of humanity. So, maybe I need to give him a better go. Mm-hmm. I'll check out that All-Star Superman.
All right, well, cool, guys. This was really fun. I really appreciate you letting me take the time to step onto your podcast.
Well,
absolutely.
I appreciate you reaching out and contacting me. You're super awesome. I really like your stuff. So you got a fan for life in me.
Cool. You want me to do the plug? You guys want to do it? You want me to do it?
Go for it.
Oh, you
take it away.
All right. So please check out Chosen Episode 1. It's free on Amazon and Smashwords. If you Google Chosen Episode 1, hopefully there'll be a link in the description for you to go to. Also, please check out authorwilldickstein.net, where you can easily sign up for the Chosen newsletter, so you can get free Flash Fiction monthly, as well as updates and previews on other things going on in the Chosen universe. And don't forget to check out Chosen Grizz, the first volume of comics set in the Chosen universe, with a release date of May 1st.
And I will vouch for the Chosen Grizz. I will tell you that was a read. It was surprising in the best way. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's one of those things where I don't want to tell you anything about it because you gotta read it. You gotta read it. Like, there's points where you go, oh, this is cool. Oh, that's cool. And then there's a team up, and you're like, okay, this is that guy, this is that guy, and then just where it goes. I mean. It's like I got to the last 2 pages and I'm like, he's not going to end it like that, is he? There's no way. And then please tell me that there's a sequel to that, or or you're going to write a novella for it, or a novel, or I need to hear more Grizz. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, eventually, absolutely. For the next round of comics, be prepared for that answer to be no, but definitely in the future. Yeah. Definitely in the future.
All right. Yeah, nice. I mean, without a doubt, I love myself indie comics. That's kind of my realm. Is stuff that really isn't popular known, and your stuff is. I mean, I'm not trying to suck up or anything. Your stuff is really good. It's Thanks. Some of the best I've read. So.
Well, read the novellas while you wait for more comics.
Will do. I'm gonna share this out to everybody, and we'll try to make you the biggest star we can. So.
Thanks a lot.
You'll have like 20, 30 more people who know who you are. It'll be amazing.
I'm all about it. Let's do it.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Will. And we will. You know, you're definitely. If you ever got time, you know, drop me a line. You got my Gmail. And if we do other podcasts periodically, you know, if you want to be a guest and talk about comics, we'd love to have you.
Cool. Yeah. Any discussions or any time you want to promote anything, just let us know.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot.